whatever you can think of that this world has to offer, and boxing has enabled me to have that.
So I just wonder about your kind of relationship with winning and losing.
Winning or losing a fight before I've done it is of no interest to me. I'd rather have plenty of money in my bank than plenty of recognition and no money. For me, I always wanted to be a professional, world champion, a millionaire. If you don't entertain people or you don't divide opinion or whatever it might be, then you can forget about it.
History.
Can we class Rocky Balboa as Ring Magazine champion?
Do you just like to stay right in the present all the time?
Right in the present all the time.
Welcome everybody to the Ring Magazine podcast, and welcome to the podcast Tyson Fury. Great to have you here. You've got quite a rich history with the Ring Magazine in terms of the fact that you've been on the cover, you've been on it more than once, you've been ring champion on more than one occasion. It's obviously a very historic publication around boxing, and its opinion has always been valued throughout the trade. Is that have you always valued it yourself?
Yeah, I've been two-time Ring Magazine champion, comeback of the year, upset of the year, fighter of the year twice. I've won literally every award there is to win with Ring. Round of the year, event of the year. What else have I won? I've won literally everything there is to win from the Ring Magazine. So yeah, it's definitely been a big part of my career. And if I win on Saturday night, I'll become a three-time heavyweight champion of the Ring Magazine with Floyd Patterson and Ali. So yeah, it's a lot of history there.
Is it something when you're a young fighter that you feel like if you could get yourself on the cover of Ring Magazine, then you've made it almost?
I'm not sure if that's something that people think about. I'm not sure if kids even know what that is at the early stage of their career. But when you get up there and you win world titles, obviously you know what it is. But as a child, I didn't never dream of it. I didn't even know it existed.
But when you look at the list of names that you slot in alongside, I mean, Jack Dempsey was the first one, for example. You're into your boxing history.
Can we class Rocky Balboa as Ring Magazine champion? Because he was, wasn't he?
He was absolutely true. Yeah, well,
he's got to have been the most famous Ring Magazine champion of all of them.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, Rocky Balboa is real. He's a real person.
Yeah.
Because I think that there's so much that you can take from the films. I can't go too far down this road, or we'll never stop talking about it. But I would definitely count him. But you look at the names, and it's an amazing list, isn't it?
Yeah. From the beginning to the end, yeah.
So when it comes to kind of recognition and validation as an athlete, how important is it?
What's that?
Just recognition, being recognised as being really good at what you do. Is it something that's more important when you're younger? Is that something that you want when you're younger?
For me, it's never really been about recognition or what was the other word you said?
Validation. People talk about
or
that
recognition. It was basically about earning money and providing my family with a better life than I would have had if I worked at Tesco's, let's just say. So my ambition as a rider in the beginning was to buy my own house when I started boxing, because I knew lots of boxers, but I didn't know many boxers who owned their own house. Obviously, I wanted to be world champion, but my short-term goal was to buy and own my own property. Like I said, I knew lots of boxers. I didn't know anyone who actually owned their own house because they didn't really make anything out of the game. So that was my goal, and then so on and so forth. Goals change, and you want to push further and harder. And recognition is not something that I've ever thrived to have. Basically, what I've always thrived to have is nice house, nice family, nice cars, debt-free, stuff like that. And I know that boxing delivers that if you're good enough. And in order to be good enough, you've got to keep practicing and put your life and soul into something. So for many, many years, like I have. So that's why I've been successful at what I do. But even today, at 36 years old and two-time heavyweight champion of the world, that recognition is not something that I thrive on. I'd rather have plenty of money in my bank than plenty of recognition and no money type of thing, because you can't buy anything with recognition. You can't feed your kids with recognition. You can't pay your bills with recognition. So yeah, it's definitely about getting a few quid out of it for sure.
But the big money fights, they come with winning titles, they come with that recognition. It's all kind of part of the same thing in a way, isn't it?
It is for some people, but not for me. Like for me, like Saturday night's a monstrous event for me. And I've had monstrous events many times. And one day after the event, like as soon as it's done, I want to go home. I want to go back to doing the bins. I want to go back to being me. Like boxing is just, it doesn't define me, if that makes sense. Like that's your job, that's your day job or your night job, or it's a night job for me for sure. But that's not who I am. That's just a way of getting a living type of thing.
So what about when you were young then? What about when you started? Because there was no money in it then, and people
no, but
come
I
into
was
sport.
always wanting to be world champion. I wanted to make money out of it. If someone said to me, "There's no money in boxing," at the beginning, I would have done. I would have been a builder or something. I'd have put my life into that. I only came into this game to one, be a world champion, and two, make my life secure. Not for pats on the back and stuff. That doesn't mean anything to me. Never has and it never will. Yeah.
But when you're an amateur, when you were young, and your first handful of fights like that,
that was all building
people talk about
to the future.
that pure joy of getting your hand raised, though. That passion, the passion for the sport. I mean, you've got to have that. It's too hard to do it. It never was
about amateur boxing for me. I always wanted to be professional, world champion, a millionaire. That's what I wanted. Like it wasn't about an amateur boxing contest, win or lose. It was always about planning for the future. Like even in the beginning, I didn't even think I'd have an amateur fight. I always thought I'd just turn pro when I was old enough and become world champion. I didn't know how it worked in the beginning. And obviously, I got to know boxing and had a few amateur fights, and then I turned professional young and started on the paid journey.
What kind of life is that to lead? Because it occurs to me sometimes that the life you have to lead as an elite athlete, right at the top, isn't maybe one that you would necessarily recommend. I mean, it almost doesn't seem good for a person because you have to be so obsessed and you have to be so driven and you have to be so self-critical and you have to be pretty selfish a lot of the time. You have to be all of these things. It just seems that's a hard way to live your life. I mean, how have you kind of...
For me, it's been... boxing's been very good to me. Not for everybody, but for me, it's been marvellous. I've been able to travel the world. I've been able to eat in the best restaurants, been able to have the best things, having the best training equipment, training partners, whatever you can think of that this world has to offer, then boxing has enabled me to have that. So yeah, it's been absolutely fantastic for me. Jogging down the road at 15 and 14 in the rain and snow has led me to the point of fighting in front of 90,000 people, millions watching around the world. It's been fantastic. Absolutely fantastic, and I'd recommend the boxing game to anybody because through boxing anybody can become anything. So you could be a pauper on the streets and change your stars through boxing and sports, but you couldn't do that necessarily through business or any other thing. So boxing's a very special gift. Like you can come from the most deprived background and make it to the top and become very rich and famous. So you don't have to have an education, you don't have to go to school, you don't have to do nothing. You just have to be good and talented and gifted. And that's it. So I would recommend boxing to anybody. It's a lonely sport for sure, but the rewards outweigh the negative side of it for sure, if you're good enough. Now, if you're average, no good. It's not for you. But if you're very good and you're better than everybody else at it, then it's a sport for you because you've become rich and famous.
Interesting you say rich and famous there, but the famous part for you is not, you've said to me, that's not what it's about, but the two do come together. You don't really have any choice about that,
If you're a champion and you're very famous, then that's how you get high purses and stuff. You can be a champion and nobody's heard of you, and it doesn't mean anything. You don't make any money and you retire. No money, a couple of belts on the table, and you should have to struggle on being a petrol station assistant or something like that. But if you're very popular, then you can change your stars, for sure.
Is that the trade-off then? The fact that, to really make the money, then you do need to be famous, even if you actually would prefer not to have that? Yeah.
You have to be. You can be the world's best boxer and fighter and never, ever, ever someone be better than you. But if you can't sell 10 tickets, you can forget about it. If you don't entertain people or you don't divide opinion or whatever it might be, then you can forget about it. You're never going to make it you can make it as a boxer, but you're never going to get paid out of it. And as a professional fighter, that should be the reason you're doing it.
So when this all comes to an end at some point, which
Is inevitable.
Father Time is undefeated, and all of that. Would you prefer that spotlight, that fame, just kind of faded?
It does
away. I mean, it does. You can't stop it, but people fight it though, don't they? They want to keep it. They want to stay in that
I suppose
spotlight.
if that's what they're into, a lot of people like the idea of going places and people recognising them and that being famous. They think they like it. People who are not famous would say, "I'd like to be famous," but if they are, then they really wouldn't want to be for so long, because it's you don't have no you time unless you stay in house all the time or behind high gates. So if the real famous people want to come outside and have a normal life, then they don't get to do that. So it's a saying, you can't have your cake and eat it too. So you just got to do what you got to do and keep going.
I mean, you've always been somebody who's had that tag of people's champion. And I saw a clip the other day where you were talking about how people go to Morecambe now because they feel like they might see you. It's almost like you belong to the public, and that's how the public see you, because you are very approachable. That must take a bit of a toll. There must be days where maybe you would prefer if it wasn't quite like that.
I think the best thing anybody can be is have a few quid but no fame. Just potter around as a normal person, but be able to do things that you want to do. That's probably the best way. I think a fame is very overrated, and it's for people who've never had it before and imagine what it might be like. But yeah, it's not a good thing. If you want to go to the shop, if you want to go for a walk, if you want to go to the park, you're going to be mithered. Even if you don't want to talk, you're going to have people all around you. So it is what it is. Nothing to, there's always, out of every positive, there's got to be some type of negative as well.
So I just wonder about your kind of relationship with winning and losing. Not that you've done much of the latter, it's happened once in fact, but it's always really interesting talking to top performers about about that relationship, whether they think about it, whether they don't think about it. I remember talking to you before the fight against Usyk, and you said, look, all this is you've got two people here who aren't afraid. He's not afraid, I'm not afraid, and when that happens, you're going to have a good night. As for what's going to happen in terms of who will win, I don't know. I mean, is it something that you don't even really think about?
No, it's something that I don't think about. Like, win or losing a fight before I've done it is of no interest to me. You just got to go in there and do the best you can do, I suppose. And if it's good enough, you get your hand raised, and if it's not, you lose. And that's all there is to it. It's pretty simple.
So it is a case of that, there's that line in the poem If, where they talk about, Rudyard Kipling talks about, if you can meet triumph and disaster and treat both imposters the same. I've butchered that slightly, but it's something like that. Is that how it has to be if you're you?
There is no, I don't really think of it. I don't have an opinion on it. You go in there, you do the best you can, and that's it. I believe if you do the best you can in life, no one can expect any more. That's it. There is no dwelling on the past. I heard a quote, and I wrote it down. It's in my phone. No point in looking backwards. We're not going that way. So yeah, I don't dwell on stuff that's happened in the past, and it is what it is.
I mean, have you always been like that, or is that something you've been able to develop as you got older? Because that's quite a difficult thing to do.
I've been like that for a long time, and you learn everything with experience. And I've had a lot of experience in my life, and yeah, you just keep going, keep moving forward on a daily basis.
And what do you feel the future holds for you after boxing? Is that something you think about, or do you just like to stay right in the present all the time?
Right in the present all the time. Yeah.
How that's something that people talk about a lot, and
living in the moment.
Yeah, and it comes across as this kind. At it. Yeah, well, let us in on the secret, because
there is no secret.
It's like a holy grail, though. People are talking about it all the time, particularly these days. Like, how do you manage to just stay present? I mean, do you have any kind of tips for that? It's something I've thought about myself quite a lot recently.
Yeah, I don't really have any tips about it, but it's just living in the moment. That's it, enjoying every minute as it comes. Not thinking about tomorrow or yesterday, and not planning for the future, which is difficult for people to do. especially when they're saving for stuff or they're trying to be somebody or they're working at improving themselves. It's very difficult. I think it's probably the most hardest thing on this earth that we are try to do is stay in the moment that we are in. And I've been banging on about it for years, living in the moment. We only have moments in time, and that's it. As soon as we leave that door, this is over, and we never get it back. These few seconds, minutes, however long it's been, it's precious because it's evaporated after we've gone. It's just a memory. So if we're living in the moment, we've got to enjoy every minute. That's it. Which is easier said than done.
Yeah, because you've had
But
some
it's all
very hard
practice,
moments.
It's practice.
All people have really hard moments, but you had a long period in your life where it was nothing but hard moments by the sound of it.
About 29 years. Yeah, a long time.
That is a long time. I mean, living in those moments.
Difficult.
Yeah, how do you do that?
Difficulty. Very much so, but you got to carry on and keep going, and that's it. Because there's nothing else we can do as humans. We've got to carry on and keep getting up in the mornings, and that's it. For however long we're here for.
And do you feel that's people talk about legacy quite a lot in sport, particularly in boxing? Do you feel like that is something that you can that almost is your legacy, that you can leave people? It's not necessarily the titles you won, and it's not the recognition, it's not the validation. It's that message to people.
Not really. No, I've never been interested in legacy at all. I think your legacy, when you die, is what you leave behind, and that will be your kids, I suppose, if you've got any, or what you've achieved, type of thing. And achievements don't really last very long anyway, because as soon as you've achieved something, someone else comes and does it more. So achievements and records are for breaking, and legacy for me is what you leave when you leave this world, and whatever that might be is very unimportant. If I'm up in heaven, hopefully. And I won't be bothered about what earthly things went on.
And you don't really get to decide it either, I suppose. Other
Definitely not. Yeah. And no two opinions are the same, so it doesn't really matter. What I've learned from my short life of 36 years is, I think it's very useful, is never try to please anybody else other than the one person who can affect your life, which is your wife, in my life. And that's it. If I can just please one person, I'm happy. Everybody else outside the wife, well, they're not that important. Do you know what I mean? To please. So the thing with today is, with the social media world, is people want total strangers to like them. And I've never heard anything so stupid in my life. Like, people from around the world can be affected by what a total stranger would say to them in a different country. And for the first time ever, in thousands of years of this planet existing, this would be the only time in the last, say, 10, 15 years where people have cared about total strangers' opinions who they've never met or are likely to meet or never seen, all through social media, which is crazy.
Yeah, it is, and it's obviously it's a fairly recent thing, but I mean it does come. It kind of brings us back in a way to what we started talking about, because the Ring magazine's over 100 years old, but a main constituent of it has always been ratings. You know, getting rated, and as an athlete, you can't. There's no avoiding it, is there? There's a rating system that the sanctioning bodies have got their top 15s, and at some point in your career, they would have mattered because. Well, you forced your way into mandatory position, didn't you? So none of us are immune from it, are we?
No, for sure. Everyone's got to have something, especially in sports, whether you're a runner, boxer, jumper, whatever it might be, to get into that top 10, shall we say. It's just somebody's opinion and activity, basically, which is crazy.
And in boxing in particular, because it's not like we have a league where you can compare recent performances against common opponents. We can compare performances against common opponents sometimes, but
styles make fights though in this game.
Yeah, it can be of limited value. So in the early stages of a career, I guess that's something you have to put up with, the fact that other people in a way do have quite a lot of control over the opportunities you'll get.
For sure. There's always other people in control of others' lives. It's always been like that, and it will continue. But the one thing that we are in charge of is our own destiny. No one else can be in charge of that.
And that's something you believe in, destiny?
100%.
Things are fated?
Yeah, meant to be.
And everything that's
I wouldn't
happened
be
to you,
here if I wasn't meant to be.
Everything that's happened to you, I mean, did you
Good,
feel
bad,
like,
and ugly.
you feel like it was written?
Sure, yeah. Along the journey, long journey.
Okay, well, we got onto all sorts of things there.
Pretty deep, actually, yeah.
Well, it's not that often
Deeper
I get
than
the
your
chance to
average.
sit down and talk at length in a fight week with somebody like yourself. So thank you very much. That was an absolute pleasure, Tyson Fury.
Thank you very much. Appreciated.